Okay. Mr. Bernstein, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so here we are. It's June already, the 4th of June, 2023. I'm Mark Bernstein, the developer of Tinderbox. This is the Tinderbox weekend meetup with Michael Becker.
Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to be here this week after being off for the last couple of weeks. Actually, traveling for business. And so today we've got a pretty exciting agenda. We're going to have a review of posters. Typically, the way our meetups work is we have new people introduce themselves. We have people introduce topics or projects they're working on. Then we address any theme that we're going to be discussing for the day. And then we have any anecdotal stuff if there's time left over. So today our theme is posters, which is a new feature that Mr. Bernstein has been working on for the next major release of Tinderbox, which we're super excited to see. But before we jump into that, Mark had a demo he wanted to provide us of a ChatGPT integration with Curl. So I thought maybe we could start with that, and then we'll jump into the posters.
It was Detlef.
Or Detlef, sorry, Detlef. So Detlef, you want to take it away and give us your, demo real quick?
Yeah. Just give me a second. Tinderbox, there it is. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fine. It's a very basic demo. I will work on it later and will upload it to the forum for sure, so you can play with it yourself. What I try to do here is OpenAI. The ChatGPT engine, they offer API, so you can access the functionality of this artificial intelligence engine from the outside. And that's what I did. I tried to integrate it as maybe as flexible as possible into Tinderbox, because I thought that it is a great addition for what I do with Tinderbox, that is personal knowledge management. And I just wanted to show you some ideas and how you can implement it in Tinderbox. And so I just for this demo, I added some notes. And for example, we can go here and for example, I have a text here, and then I have some attributes specific for these nodes. I made a prototype for this called POpenAI, but it depends what you would like to do if you need to have those parameters, those attributes stored inside of a node, or more generally in one place for all nodes. The later one, I think, is the better one, but for my demo to play around, it's better to have it inside of each node. Here are some parameters you need for the API. For example, with tokens is parts of words. Recently are 3 tokens. And that's what you have to pay for if you use it extensively. You have a free amount of tokens each month, and it's a large amount, but the number of tokens is always limited. So, for example, if I limit to 100 tokens and the text has more tokens, more words, OpenAI will cut working on the text. It will stop in the middle of the text, whatever. You can easily adjust it here, enter a number higher than 100 and do things like that. Then you have stuff like frequency, penalty, or whatever. Those are also needed to control a little bit the engine. That's tougher to understand than the max token attribute. And then here, that's very, very important. I have called it OpenAI AI task. That's the command I would like to solve OpenAI for me on the text you see here in my notes. So for example, I have a stamp here, call it get answer with OpenAI. I run it. And it always takes a time. It's not, it's asynchronous. And I have a debug window. And now I got my result. I think it starts here. So I ask him there's a new planet, and I would like a table summary for the fruits of this new planet. And what we can see here is that's my fruits and also some attributes of the fruits he extracted from the text. That's just a simple sample of what we can do. Or the second one is that's more closer to what I need. I have some keywords in here, and I would like to, there might be some keywords in the text. I don't know. Right now, I just tell him, okay, get me the keywords from this text. We have to wait a little bit until the process finished. And suddenly, whoop, here I have some keywords. OpenAI tells me that may be relevant for this text, and it's very good. The task, the way you ask OpenAI what it should do for you is very, very important. The more precise you are with your question, the more the better the answer will be, and so on. That's also very interesting. I have to delete it. I'm doing the same here as I did before, but right now the text is in German. And also my question for the OpenAI is German. And still, after magical seconds, here what I get is keywords in German. It will work in any language that OpenAI supports. That's also very powerful to use it. Or you can do something different. There's a guy called Mark Bernstein. You may have heard of him, you or not. And what I did is I asked to have a short bio of Mark. And then, okay, I go to my debug window. Let's see. Hours later. And here we have a bio of Mark Bernstein. And for example, I always add the authors. If I make a note with a text from an author, I add a second note with the name of the author and some data about the author. And this would automatically add a small information about the author without me having to do anything. You always have to be skeptical about what the output is. I can produce things that don't work as they should, but normally it's fine like this, and it's working very, very fine. So last thing, I have several notes around here, all related about Zettelkasten. I select my notes. I run my stamp, and I will show you the code also shortly. And again, it will take some time. Okay, here we are. And now if I go back to my map, I have my relations between the nodes automatically done after OpenAI selected the keywords, and based on the keywords found, I have this structure already. And this is incredible for me, for my work with my Zettelkasten. I still have to redefine and look whether the quality of the links is fine, but this is done like this without any work. And that's really, for me, expanding the usefulness of Tinderbox. And I know of no other tool beside of Tinderbox where the benefit of using OpenAI is so obvious. That's what I.
And to be clear, Detlef, you're using action code to establish those links.
Yeah, I'll show you in a minute. Let's see, hints. Okay, the stamps are nothing special. I just will give you a short overview of what I did. This function is the main function I'm using. It's building a curl statement, adding all, and this second function is adding all the attributes as parameters for this function. building it together as a string. I need a string. Curl is a simple string. And then I use the run command, this one, with this string with all my parameters. And then I will get a result. A small problem with running this is that's not related to curl, but related to how OpenAI works. For example, this is a result you get from OpenAI. That's typical. You get some statistics about the call you made, and then here in this JSON object, you have all the returned data. And what's interesting for us is this one, the text stuff here. And if you look here, it starts with 2 line breaks, then a slash, black on black. I asked for keywords here. Again, then the separator again is a return, new line, and a slash. Here's another result. And here, OpenAI writes keywords. It doesn't do it on the other return. It adds this keywords term. I don't know why, but it does it like that. And here we have the same, no keywords, but we have a comma as a separator. Before we had a new line as a separator. And that's what I did here in this simple function. I'm trying to clean up the return data from OpenAI, so I get always a list, something I can work with in Tinderbox. And I think this is the part that needs some more work with. Also, what you can do is, let me see. Yeah, here I asked OpenAI extract keywords from this text. And here I ask him, no, there. Extract keywords from this text and return the found keywords as a comma-separated list. This helps a lot in structuring the return data. But I didn't play around too much with this, but I think it's important to do things like that because I don't know what creativity is in the return function of OpenAI. It's not always the same. And as a programmer, I need always the same approach to work with it. And so here's some cleaning again. And here is also I'm separating the returned list data into my keywords, and here I'm building the links from the keywords. That's normal Tinderbox stuff around here. That's all you need. That's all you need.
And Detlef, have you thought about having Tinderbox actually create a new note with the result as opposed to dumping it all into the debug?
Yeah, for sure. That's one option. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But
Very
the main
cool.
part, what you need is this one. And maybe this one too, yes. And maybe something for cleaning the return text. And then you can play around with it and do whatever you need to do. That's all I wanted to show for today.
Awesome. So when will you be able to post it so we can play with it later?
I within the week, this week.
Awesome.
Give me some days to clean it up a little bit and add some more explanations inside the text.
Beautiful. Anybody have any comments, questions? Thoughts, ideas? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Detlef. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any other thing they want to discuss today before we jump into
Michael, I'm struggling with the screens, but can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Mark from the Netherlands. I just wanted to tell you that I've been experimenting today with ChatGPT as well, and it works very well with Arabic language also. So other alphabets is really, it was very interesting. I did not believe it until I saw it, but even more complex things. So Detlef, thank you for demonstrating it. I now have to use, I did not yet come to the point where I was using ChatGPT and Tinderbox at the same time, but perhaps your demonstration will inspire me to get that done. Who knows? Thank you very much.
Awesome. Okay. Anybody else have anything they're working on? Okay, if not, let's jump into our program theme for the day. And just so you know, Mark or everyone, I have to leave at a hard stop at 10. So we'll keep the recording going and all of that, but I'm going to shut off my video and all that and disappear promptly at 10. So you guys have the final 30 minutes to moderate yourself. Maybe Mr. Anderson can take over the moderation for the last 30 minutes. Do you mind me volunteering you there, Mark?
No, I'll be here till the close of play.
All right, yeah. So I'll promptly disappear at 10 o'clock, and then you can take over. All right, Mr. Bernstein, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. This is going to be a really exciting meetup with lots of new technology. It's really fun to see how ChatGPT actually does interesting things inside Tinderbox. And that was surprisingly useful. And it's about to get much easier to do. So that will save a certain amount of time from mucking about in Tinderbox, and make it easier to try things like ChatGPT. So back in the good old days, a headline feature of 9.5 was images, improving the facility with which we could include images in Tinderbox maps and Tinderbox notes, and with which we could preview them and export them. And that worked pretty well. And this led me to think more and more about the nature of the Tinderbox map and the nature of the hyperbolic view. And as you see, it used to be you couldn't have big pictures or many pictures in Tinderbox, but now you can pretty much have as many pictures as you want, and nothing very bad happens to the scroll rate or dexterity, even if the pictures are complex or blown up. So yeah, Tinderbox does change from time to time, and but 9.6, though it's not a particularly interesting number, is going to, I think, have one of the most exciting changes in some time. At least for me. Now, one of my problems as a developer from the beginning was keeping Tinderbox young enough so that it was malleable enough to add new things to, and to, in particular, to incorporate new ideas. So Tinderbox today is designed very much to be a desktop system. It demands lots of computation. Its target is demanding ongoing tasks, tasks in which you're going to work frequently over a long period of time. That means that it's not for everyone, because not everyone does that sort of thing. But Tinderbox is best at things that use a lot of computer and a lot of you over a lot of time. Now, in the last decade or so, there have been more and more tools for thought developed in or around the browser, literally in the browser like Chrome, or in any case, web panes like Twine. This gives you opportunities for fast development, open source leverage, and extensibility. A premise here is that in exchange for fast development and extensibility, it turns out some users will accept real limitations on the software. It's really hard to write a good text editor by current standards in the browser, but people will accept Markdown as a substitute for a good or even adequate text editor, or at least some people will. What really brought this home to me is a research system cited at the bottom here by Andy van Dam and company called Dash. It's a modern hypertext system building off of ideas from the classic Brown University hypertext systems, but re-implemented to be in TypeScript, run in the browser. And in a undergraduate course, the term project for students was to put together a small team to implement a new facility, like a new view inside this system. Tinderbox, even though it's architected so it's easy to add new stuff, you could not ask, you certainly couldn't ask undergraduates to do this as a side project in like 1/10 of their 9 months in school. It's just not going to happen. Yet they did some really interesting things. This made me jealous, and so I started thinking about doing my own system in a browser. But fortunately, I had a better idea. This is coming in Tinderbox 9.6, which is probably about a month off. It's available now in the Backstage builds. Backstage, for those who haven't met it, is a program we have that you can sign up for $100, and gives you access to preliminary releases, design discussions, a special forum for those discussions, and so forth. It expects that you're okay with more bugs than we would normally inflict on people, but that's the nature of experimental software. You can find it at eastgate.com/tinderbox/backstage.html if you're interested. So posters are little browser windows that are held up in front of the note. It's like a note is trotting onto stage, but it's carrying a poster in front of it that's bigger than it is. The point of posters, and I'm going to need to stop my share and rejigger. The point of posters is, first of all, where's my Zoom? There we are. Share. The point of posters is to leverage the incredible, often open source libraries that have been created for people to do visualizations and other computational tasks on the web. Now we can do all of these inside Tinderbox, and instead of trying to be 80% as good as the libraries or R or Excel, we can just use them. So here's a typical example. This one is called Plotly. It's built on top of other libraries. It's available for free for most purposes, or quite reasonably for others. And it creates lots and lots and lots of different charts, histograms and box plots and heat maps and things too fierce to mention. It's incredibly flexible, but it's mostly meant to produce publication quality charts. And it's got that problem down. And now you can take this and use it inside Tinderbox in a fairly straightforward way. Okay. Switch sharing again to the correct window. So, as I said, a poster is a regular old Tinderbox note that is holding up a WebKit view, essentially a little web browser in front of itself. And it's displaying some HTML, because that is what that's what all web browsers do. Now, for review, an HTML file begins with an HTML tag and ends with a end tag. And it's got two sections, a head section and a body section. The head section is for stuff that explains how this page is supposed to be presented. For example, what the styles you're using are. And the body contains the things that you're going to present in some way on the page. So a typical poster looks pretty much like this. We've got a tag that says, go load the script library. Usually you end up loading it from a distant site, which is where the library resides. So you just have one line that says, go get Plotly from here, or go get Google's library from there. You might also have the script stored locally in a note. You can do that. That's usually less convenient, but if you're going to be working in a place with no internet access, you would want it locally. You can also have style notes that you might include. And then in the body, we typically, this changes from library to library, but you typically say, here is the place I want you to render the thing that you're going to render. And then you call a function in the library, here, draw it, where you tell it the name of the place and you give it some data. And that's all you do. Notice all of this is being generated like a preview locally, except for possibly we're retrieving the script from wherever the script library is. We have a pile of new attributes to support posters, but most of them are completely easy and obvious. A number of them aren't even used unless you want to. For example, poster X and poster Y are just list attributes where if you want, you could store things like the X-axis and the Y-axis data for a plot. They don't have any meaning, but we're going to need a couple more sandbox attributes. I'm going to look at how to make posters, but you probably don't need to make posters, because my guess is that what you will probably do is you will probably download a demo or buy a poster package, or possibly you'll go to someone like Michael Becker and say, I want to use your poster X, and for moderate fee, you'll pop on a Zoom call and get it integrated with your project. So I think a lot of people who use posters aren't actually going to have to create posters from scratch. But I'm going to show you a bunch of posters today, and none of them took me more than a couple of hours. And that's including a couple for which I had to write new pieces of Tinderbox in order to support what the poster does. So in summary, we've often settled for good enough in visualization, because that's about all we can really do unless we want to become a visualization tool. And we've settled for good enough in diagramming because we don't want to become a diagramming tool. But now I think it's going to be practical to get what you want pretty much within the Tinderbox map, pretty much free. Okay, for example, here is a poster. It's a poster that's showing us some math. We had a query a couple of months ago about getting subscripts and superscripts into Tinderbox exports, so you could do previews of things like H2SO4, and the subscripts would show up in the right place. And that was easy enough to add, but of making many export improvements, there is no end. Now, things like the second line here are a pain in the neck to typeset. And they're even rather a pain in the neck to read. Like if I want to dictate this to you, making clear that x sine theta is all inside the square root sign is not an easy thing to express. The way we do this in a language called MathJax, I should make this a little bigger for you. So the first line is had h capital psi equals e psi, which some of you will recognize as Schrödinger's equation. Or the first derivative of the function is a1 square root of x sine theta. We have enclosed these in backticks, and what the script does is picks up anything in backticks and passes it to the library function. Everything else is treated normally. Yeah. If I go into this much detail, we'll be here all day. Mermaid's another library. I made it bigger, and so the poster got bigger. Oops. Mermaid is a diagramming library. It does flowcharts and things quite nicely. Here, the flowchart says like node A, which should be labeled start, links to node B, which is labeled is it. And you see start and is it and so forth. So with a simple conventional text format, we indicate how we want Mermaid to lay out the flowchart, and it does. And there's lots of settings for making the colors what you want, making the fonts what you want, and so forth. Or you can do this kind of chart, which is a nice kind of timeline view. Again, with a very simple textual format, which you can put together quite easily in Tinderbox. It's not just mathematics. VexFlow is another library that does this for music. And here, I find this an awfully obscure way to write music, but looking at it, it's not that bad. And in fact, it takes an enormous amount to specify fairly simple musical scores. There are a bunch of different chart libraries, and I tried to pick the winner and I couldn't figure it out. So I've got demos for a bunch of them, but here's a simple histogram. I'm using poster X to list the categories. I'm using poster Y to list the raw vote. It takes almost no time, and I get a better chart than I can get using the Tinderbox plot facility, which is actually a little bit harder to use. Here's a similar task done with Google Charts. Here we have Pokey, which is age 8, weight 12. We've taken Pokey out of the data set, and now we only have 2 points. We put Pokey into the data set, and we have 3 points. Google Charts is quite nice because it does these choropleth maps. I don't know why it's called choropleth, but it is. And these are a pain to do. if you don't have the map outlines already in your database. And getting them into your database has been something I've been wishing for some time, but never gotten around to. Another API library is Plotly. I showed you their site earlier. Here we've got, again, a simple plot. I change the data, the plot changes. And again, we have quite simple arguments. You can figure this out without too much trouble. And it's picking up the style from this note here, which says, give me this much. So, and again, we can take the trick I showed earlier with a container that holds the data, marshals it, pumps it over to the poster. So here we have a histogram that's taking data from here, style from here, and we're using a function that says, find me the note that's linked with this name that's linked from this poster, which is easy enough and lets us, in this case, have lots of notes with the same name without getting confused. If you want gigantic motivational gauges to tell you how far you've gotten in your project, you can have them. One thing I find quite useful is to keep track of when I'm working on different projects. So this container, whenever it loads Tinderbox, sees if it's made a note inside itself today. Looks up today's date, makes a string with today's date on it and sees if there's a note with it. If there isn't, it makes a new one and puts, in this case, the number of notes in the whole document into a numerical attribute on that note. So without actually doing anything, I have a container that updates itself with information about changes to the document. Someone on the forum asked about this kind of sunburst diagram, which, again, you can do quite easily. Smiles is a library that does chemical structures. Some of my old good friends from my dissertation days. Cytoscape does graph visualizations like this one. We have a list of nodes, a list of edges, a instruction for the layout style, and an instruction for how we want to draw nodes. For example, if we want the nodes to be red, and it goes and draws this new diagram. Something people have asked about fairly often in Tinderbox is diffs. That is, could I have a facility that takes the old version of a note and the version that I just revised shows me everything I've changed? And that's certainly doable, but everyone likes to do or present diffs in a different format and in a different way. And so getting any consensus about the right way to do that is has effectively prevented us from doing it at all. Now we can just plug in a library and a couple of notes, the before note and the after note, and see that I've changed the word central to many. Processing is a computer language. For a few of you have expressed interest in coding, either because you want to get stuff done in Tinderbox actions or because people are interested. Processing is a language that was designed for to be a good first language. And this is actually not an animation. This is a program that's running indefinitely all the time to draw this fractal in various variations. And here is the program that's running in this window. We make a canvas, which is the size of our poster. And to draw it, we have a background that's 120. If I make it 0, the background will be black. We say, I want to draw 30 times a second. I want the strokes to be 255. That's white. And now I'm going to take 100 steps going bigger and then 100 steps going smaller, and so forth. And we just draw this recurrent branch until we get to the point where we're drawing tiny little branches and there's nothing more to draw, at which point we stop. So we can actually do quite a bit inside posters without worrying about performance. This had me quite scared at first, but in fact, it's not a big problem. You can also, in posters, actually grab the HTML from some other place. This is actually a live reference to ATBRef, which has been slightly reformatted so it can fit in a poster more conveniently. So that's doable. I don't think that'd be a major use for posters, but it's certainly something that you can do. So that's a big pile of posters. As I said, this is coming for general release with 9.6, which is probably about a month away. Should not be too far off that. You can get it now backstage, and certainly it's in a state that's usable now if you have a project that needs posters. So thanks, and I hope there are some questions.
First of all, yay, super exciting.
Fantastic, fantastic.
So I do have a couple questions, Mark. So how easy or can we demonstrate pulling those into output? So we're looking at it in the map view. Let's say now we want those actually to be rendered into a HTML export view.
What you would do is you would include all right, let me get here. Suppose if you want this in a export, then you want to include the script in the head of your export template. You basically take the poster template and you do the things you do in the poster template in your export template, and then export to HTML, and from HTML to wherever you're going.
Okay.
Peter's got a hand up, Mark.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, Peter.
Yes, is there a way to request the final generated bitmap as a graphic from the poster?
That's an interesting idea. There isn't now. There could be. The problem is sometimes, let me put that differently. Often what the libraries do is create SVGs, which they then display. And it feels bad to like get a TIFF when you, by drawing an SVG, what you would really like is the SVG. So
Definitely.
the right way to do it is not clear in the general case, but it certainly should not be difficult to do it in the kind of brutal bitmap way. And of course, much can be done just by taking a screenshot of the poster and pasting it where you need it to go. That's tacky, but it'll get the job done. And after all, this is note taking.
Yeah, I just quickly note. I mean, I've been playing around with some posters in the last week. I mean, I've been very impressed with this, and just pick up on Mark's point about someone asked about doing things for export. For those who do venture down the road of sort of building their own posters, another quite neat way of sort of deconstructing things so you understand them, and if you're not expert in using these sort of online libraries, is you can basically make a note that it exports, or you can make a web page and sort of save it that works. Then you can turn that into an HTML template and you can see it in preview and know that works. And at that point, you can then start to stick all the live bits in and move it across into the poster. That's a way, if you're very expert, you won't need that. But for most of us, it's probably quite a logical route you'll find. And then obviously, as you become more used to the overall process, you won't need so much hand holding. But it's very nice the way that works. Mark.
Mark.
Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing sometimes with all those marks around, but I'll do my best. My question is, I have a little bit of difficulty to understand immediately how to make that all work, but would it be possible to have like, let's say 100 notes and producing a certain result in a graphical form? Like, for example, whatever numbers or word occurrences, or let you have like for every note you make a specific analysis, and you want to have the cumulative results, the total results in one graph.
Yeah, well, I think that's pretty much what we're doing here.
Okay.
This note, do you see the inspector? I forget if this screen share shows the inspector or not. The action inspector? Okay, good. This is easy enough. It would be easier if it were large enough. There we go. We make a name by taking today's date and formatting it, year, and then month, and then day. And we make a note with that name. If that note already exists, we just get a reference to the existing note, and we don't create a second note, because that's the way create conveniently works. We count the number of notes in the document, and we set my number of this note to the number of notes in the document. We also make the note wider because the name having like year, month, and day and 2 dashes is too long to look good. And so the poster X data is a list of all of the names of the children. That is the dates. And the poster y-axis is my numbers of all the children, the note counts gathered from the document. And the one new mysterious thing is we say, this note over here, that is the plot, has changed. Please redraw it, so that once this is finished working, we will refresh this note, and otherwise we have to click on it. So that's pretty much going out and looking at the whole document, creating a summary. I've been using this for a paper I was writing for Everardo, who I saw on this call. Had to get it in a fairly tight word count boundary. And so I was actually displaying both the number of notes and the word count actually in the draft with very frequent updates. And that worked out nicely.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? I think everyone's kind of gobsmacked and overwhelmed. It's a lot.
Yeah, I'm super blown away. It's fantastic. I had one question. In the difference poster, the before and after, are those just notes that you see
Yeah,
on
those
screen?
are just notes. That's just
perfect.
notes.
Okay, fantastic. So I can actually say throw up the word count for the before and after version as a subtitle. Okay, perfect.
Now, when you say they're just notes, like where, like I'm looking at the
They're here. This is the
there it is.
before,
Got it.
and this is the after. And here I changed libel to prone, and I could change it back. And if I refresh the poster, the change has gone away.
Now, is there any way to, I mean, it might be, this is a major overreach, but how would one then leverage that for like accept and reject for updating your notes? You know, so I can visually see the difference, but now maybe I want to incorporate those changes back into my
no, this isn't necessarily track changes, though there are it might be possible, not with this library, but there are probably libraries that would let you do it and create a third one by accepting some changes and refusing others.
Yeah. Okay.
Chuck.
So your fractal view that's showing there at the bottom.
Yeah.
General question. I think I know what's going on, but the calculations that are being done for that processing and to generate the other graphs, I assume are being done by scripts that are running in your local web script poster, or are they running on a remote site?
No, they're running in the poster.
Okay. So all the code is executing on your computer to the Tinderbox app.
Yes.
Okay. Is it feasible, do you think, to have something become a window into a computational result that's showing up, that is actually created and maintained on another site? Have you thought of that? Is that something that you think is feasible?
It might well be. My instincts for feasibility of things like that are very poor these days. I tend to assume that you'd never have the bandwidth, but I remember when 9600 baud for every machine was like an unattainable future. So yes.
So do many of us.
Yeah. I don't see why not. Again, on this sort of time scale, and of course, assuming that you're connected to that other process, that other machine with a sufficiently thick pipe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give an example just to illustrate. This comes from my own personal experience, but it may trigger some thoughts by you and others. In the world of network management and network security and cybersecurity, there are lots of systems that are constantly churning through data and producing intermediate results and putting up dashboards of various types. And one of the things that it might be useful to use Tinderbox for is as a vehicle for displaying some key snippets of information or dashboards from other systems in your local environment, and perhaps extracting some of that data for further analysis.
Sure, I can certainly see that. And for that sort of application, polling is not too bad a solution.
Correct.
I mean, you could.
I mean, your browser does it all the time. So
yeah.
Well,
The browser, we hope, is doing events, but you could just, like, say every 10 seconds or every second, look to see if there's a new picture that you've been sent. And if it is,
Right.
put it in your poster.
Right.
But Mark, I mean, in the example below, the bottom one on the screen, that's
Yeah.
actually just showing a web page. Now, I don't know,
Yeah.
that page obviously doesn't change dynamically, and I assume that
And-
when this poster renders, it shows the picture at the time. But you could, if you sent using the new changed feature, you could basically you could almost set that to a timed refresh. So I think some of the bits are probably there, Chuck. I mean, as ever, the fun will be finding the bits that we know, don't work in the way we expected.
Well, it's the juxtaposition of the fractal view above and the ATBref link below that got me thinking along those lines. So yes.
Yeah.
Well, if the picture you're looking at, the live one, the processing one, was, for sake of example, a web page,
yeah,
and you put that URL into, so posters work without going too deeply. There are two ways that posters work. You either basically give it a template and you render it locally. You pull down the library or use a local library and you do all that. Or in this, the sort of the lesser expected way is just the bottom one, where you just say, actually, what I want to see here is I want to see the following web page, and it just gets you that. And of course, it's never that easy, because it turns out you didn't want the whole page, or you wanted the page updated every so often. But broadly, I think probably some of the bits that you're after are probably there already.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to clarify the option, and I can see lots of ways that both methods could be used.
Hmm.
So I agree. This is very exciting.
And I'll just add in one thing, so catching up on the earlier question, which I think Michael made about, where's this coming from? The difficulty of doing this sort of demo is you actually want to sort of show people all the bits. So the way it's arranged on this map is the sort of the data feeding into the poster is on the same map. But like as not, you may well, in reality, so in the diff example, the before and after could be being pulled from anywhere in your Tinderbox. I mean, that side of it is no more, no less than action code with which most of us here are broadly familiar. And if we're not, we can ask someone in the forum to sort that bit out. It just helps when you're seeing this initially the first time around and say, oh, right, so it's taking this thing and it's this thing and it's comparing them, or it's taking data from these to make a graph. But in reality, you don't have to have all that sort of input data on the same map. That's not a requirement to make the poster work.
I have to run in like 2 minutes, by the way. I just want to ask one quick question. So Mark, can you address the concept? We might as well bring it out now, in that if one has their own internal template that they're trying to display, or their images pulling in from their hard drive into a template that they want to display in the map view. Currently in Backstage, we've been talking about that and it can't be done. So no, we might as well just address that.
I've come up with a compromise position we'll try out next week.
Awesome.
Where if you can get your image references in the HTML to be absolute references, absolute file references.
Yeah.
Because there's no place, unless we do an actual site export, there's no particular place to be relative to,
right,
for a poster. But I have turned on disk access from posters, and that may be what you need.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I'm gonna put you on mute and all that, keep the recording going, but I gotta drop. See you later.
Thanks.
So if I stand in as proxy for Michael, are there any sort of questions, any more questions at this point on posters?
I'm just kind of curious, how much headroom does this take? Like in the old days, we drop an image in, say, a 400K or 500K image, and it took up some headroom. Am I to assume that these posters take up less?
They take up very little on disk in the file.
Okay.
Now, in memory, they can take much more because, like the processing, this one not only has whatever it needs to draw, but it also has an entire language interpreter and parser backing it. And so, yeah, that can use some memory, but yeah, you've got a lot of memory. Might as well use it.
Yeah.
And and also, I mean, there's some care gone into this. So, for instance, if you scroll the thing that's on screen at the moment off screen, it doesn't keep it doesn't need to keep redrawing that. So, you know, the app's sort of clever enough, because obviously the first thing that somebody's going to do is produce every possible poster under the sun and stick them on the same map, because why wouldn't you? And at some point, you may run out of resources, but generally, it's quite thoughtful in the way that, you know, you don't need to be running stuff that's not in front of you. In the same way that if you have a tab that's not selected, it's not doing any. It's not making any effort to draw a map that it's not showing. Which is why if you have a very complex map, you may very occasionally see the tab label flash in red, and that's just Tinderbox saying, right, give me a moment, I'm just drawing everything out for you. So you know, there's some unseen thought that's been put in here. Kudos to Mark. You know, so that there isn't too much an overhead. And of course, the map, the images as such are transient because they're created at the fly. They're not stored anywhere. So you may be seeing a rich visual picture as a poster, but that's not an image that's being stored anywhere, because, you know, when the poster is not being rendered, there is no picture.
Gotcha.
Anyone else?
I would just have a short question. How about exporting it, like the poster only, so that you can use it also in other software? Is it like is it going to be copy paste or anything else, or would you go about that? Well,
if you, I mean, essentially, and I think it's in, I don't know if it's any of these demos at the moment, but you're just using an export template. If you think of it the other way around, when you make a poster template, is just you telling Tinderbox, hey, use this template to create this page, but I'm going to do it internally as a poster. But the language, the structure is exactly the same, because basically you're pulling web assets. It's web structure, it's HTML all the way down. So basically, as long as your poster template is a valid HTML page, you can basically use exactly the same template file, set it as a notes HTML export template, and you'll be able to see that in the preview in the app, and you'll be able to export it. Because again, bear in mind that when the magic is happening due to the library that's being pulled. Now, whether you use a local copy or you pull one live from the internet is sort of down to you. I mean, obviously, if you're somewhere with limited bandwidth, or, you know, you may be in a sort of less connected part of the world, that's fine. You could pull down the library and run it locally, perhaps on your hard drive. So you could still export an HTML page, have it run using a library that's actually on your hard drive. So, you know, all these options are open. But essentially, you're just doing the same thing as you're doing in the poster externally. So there's nothing extra to learn, I think, is probably the short takeaway. Does that help, Mark?
Yes, thank you very much.
So in a way, you're basically now able to use Tinderbox as an environment to create applets of your own, just using your existing skills like action code. knowledge of libraries and functions.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that applet is the ideal description for posters, but they certainly have a feel of being applets. I think they're more like widgets. The
Fair point,
things that you
yeah,
can
yeah.
add to your homepage on iPhones
I love it. It's
and
so
watches.
amazing. Super, brilliant work.
So I think from the initial tinkering around I've been doing sort of in the backstage context, I suspect most of us will go through the phase where we'll start by building something wonderfully over complex and then realize that that isn't really the best use of the thing. And you'll slowly zero down as to what makes sense. You know, you probably don't need to make a poster for everything, even if you think you should start with. It's a matter of saying, you know, where does this add value to my work? And as Mark said at the outset, some people will never need posters ever at all. And others of us, you know, may make quite heavy use, but maybe in some files and not in others. It's just a really, really neat way to get around this problem of having to build features, actually so bake them into the app and keep them all running, given that there's this quite vibrant development going on in terms of, you know, things you can do in a web page. And in a sense, it's a good idea to leverage that there isn't a particular downside. I mean, the worst thing you can really do is just use it too much, and then your computer at some point will tell you you're doing too much, and you may have to just ease back a bit. Dave.
Yeah, not only that, it's brilliant because if you think about it, it's the free puppy problem, right? There's no such thing. You implement these features and they're implemented in sort of a halvesy way, and then you've got the problem of continually keeping them up, and you can't do it. It just gets worse and worse and bigger and slower, and this dodges all of that. It's a portal into another series of worlds that are other people's problems, and we just get to leverage it.
Now, I think that this is going to be very interesting and probably very useful for a lot of people. In terms of like you're saying, I would really like this visualization or a diff tool and not just a diff viewer, various other things that I'm sure people are imagining. The way these libraries most often present themselves is, here's the wonderful stuff we can do. And second, it's really easy. Here is a very simple example of a page that does a very simple but attractive thing with our library. And that page is often only about this big. I should stop my share. Only about this big. And so you copy that page onto your machine, you look at it in your browser, and of course it doesn't work the first time because nothing does. But it's only this big. So you figure out what's wrong almost instantly. And now you've got that file. And that file is literally what you want to export. And so you just teach Tinderbox to make its own version of that file, and you're done. So in practice, by the time you have actually gotten the poster working, you've already solved the how do I export this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've certainly from experience that actually one of the challenges often with these wonderful libraries is they'll show you really, really fun things. The thing often in their excitement, because they just assume you know how, is they actually explain where you plug in your data. That can often be the hardest thing to find because it's assumed to be a known thing. Whereas for anyone who isn't starting from in that sort of knowledge space, it'd be hard. But then, you know, you can always go and ask places. And it may be that the process is, first of all, you find something, you find the thing that you want to do, you find a way to connect the sort of data you want. Or another aspect of this is it's often quite hard to find out that if you want a thing this shape, what data do you have to provide it? That, again, that's often just assumed to be common knowledge. And I think that's an overassumption in all too many cases. But the point is, eventually you'll be able to find out, okay, I need to make a list of this many things. I need numbers, I need text, whatever. And then you can just gently start substituting into the sort of the working version you have and working yourself back to the point. So, okay, so right, in this line, I just put in an export value statement. And as you saw in some of the code that Mark showed, you know, once you've done it, then all you do is you change your values in Tinderbox. But this will become, I think this is interesting. It will be an exercise for us as a user to do. But then again, that's what the great thing about things like the forum. There are lots of people who will have problems that are similar to yours, but slightly different. And normally someone will have the answer, or at least can point you in the right direction. So in that sense, you're not alone. But there may be, you know, there may be some assembly required. Any other questions or new topics anyone wants to raise?
I have a question / request. Is there some way we can name individual gallery windows within a project?
Sorry, Art. I missed part of that. There's a rather loud motorbicycle going past outside.
It's okay. Is there some way we can save a name, specific name to a saved gallery view? So that this view contains my XYZ attributes. This other one is urgent. I need to see it every week. There's some way I can identify those individual views.
Well, you're thinking, you mean in terms of, in the context of posters?
No, within the gallery itself. I wasn't talking about.
Oh, in the gallery, right? Well, the gallery essentially, in a way, the one way I think of the gallery now is that there has been a gentle transition over time. Originally, if you look at the way the map and the outline work, much of the customization ends up as an attribute, whether inherited or set in a note. Some of the newer views, partly by dint of the way they work, such as attribute browser and things, actually store a certain amount of that information in the tab. And as long as the tab isn't closed, it stays in the document. So the gallery is useful because if you save the tab, all that hidden data is saved, and you can close the tab. And if you want to get it back, you just create it from there. So in terms of can you save it, if it's something you can define within a given view, yes.
Yeah, just save it with the name so I know what was specific about that particular view within the project.
Yep. Oh, yes, you could. And I'm just running from this, desperately trying to record, so to speak. But you can name the tabs that you save, and you can also put in a short note to yourself. So when you're in the gallery, yeah, you know.
Okay, I'll hunt around and find it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much.
I'll put in a link somewhere. Anyone else want to quickly do that?
Oh, I think we can get out of school a little early today.
Yeah, just find. So just putting in the chat for Art. That's a link to my ATB ref notes on the gallery.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I'll go check it out. And thanks so much, Mark. Both Marks, but Eastgate, man, really blew me away with this update. I'm just looking forward to playing with it.
Thanks so much.
We're going to get out of school early because the film was so good.
Olivia, your hands up.
Yes, first of all, say hello after a long absence. I'm glad to see many of you again. I'm still trying to get my work done. And as for this new feature, it's clear that when I imagined this work I was doing about 30 years ago, this is what I was waiting for. But I have to work with it a little more to understand. It just seems like it fits in so many patterns that I didn't know existed, and they didn't exist. So thank you, and I hope to work with it as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great session, Mark.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
next week, don't forget, we've got Jerry Mikulski on next Saturday.
Mm.
Okay.
And I saved the chat, so I'll post that onto the thread. So Michael's got that. And I guess, well, as it's running on his thing, I guess it's up to us to all file out gently and take our rubbish with us.
Right. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
bye. Thanks again.
Bye bye.
Kudos,
Thank
Mark.
you. See you next week. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.